inspiration behind it, I guess?
It's an interesting question because the inspiration kind of came in retrospect. So when I was trying to kind of conceive of ideas to make a short film, because we got a little bit of a budget. This is before I kind of approached Goldsmith. I'd had like a list of ideas, like one-liner ideas in terms of like what we'd learned at school is like you want to have like a log line that's, got high stakes and it's unlikely friendships. And so all it was a doll that needs to unravel itself. And I didn't know what for. I know there were early versions that were, set in an alleyway where it was a doll just trying to return to its owner. But it was around the time, I wasn't conscious of it happening, but it started becoming a love story at the same time I'd fallen into my first relationship. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of, it could have been coincidence, but I think it was just subconsciously, those were the things that were on my mind in terms of how much you push yourself, put yourself into a relationship versus how much you can expect from a relationship in terms of, the metaphor kind of started to make sense to me in terms of unraveling for someone else and how far is too far. So that's when that kind of thematic started to kind of, excuse the pun, but weaves itself into the film.
That's kind of cool. So you had like a small, like you had an idea and then you worked from the idea and then you made this whole entire film and it was just from there.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, I since writing the first version of the script, I'd kind of gone through two very meaningful relationships to me that had, that I'd fallen in love and then broken up and kind of healed and done it again. And it happened 2 times throughout the production of the film. And so that ending, I was always going, that stinks. Like, don't do it. Like, we want a kind of a sad ending because it's stupid. And it was like, no, you weren't hopeful. This is great. And so I think both endings worked. But it got to a point where Goldie was like both worked, but we kind of got to just stick with one. And I'm really happy where we kind of ended with that kind of very bittersweet ending where it doesn't really matter if they're able to get together or not. You can kind of see the sacrifices that they're both prepared to make for each other, and let the audience decide whether that's worth it for them. Which is, we've gotten some really interesting responses from that in terms of, obviously based on people's experience relationships, what their take would be on that.
Okay. What was a good memory from the production of the film that you would like to share? Was there any good memories?
Yeah, no, of course. I think every time we got a shot back, it was always, such in terms of the challenge of time and kind of wait, how much patience you need to kind of see how slowly this film builds up. But every time our animator turned a shot around and we could see these characters come to life, I think that was, those were my favorite days, obviously, where you could kind of see this thing coming together. It was hard work during the film. So it's like we had good memories and bad memories. Most of the good memories were seeing the audience reaction. So after production, once we could kind of, like our world premiere, we were lucky enough to be at the Berlinale, and we played for 200 kids who most of them was their first time going to the cinema. And so seeing kids laugh and cry and all that, moments that I didn't expect, like the film now belongs to the audience. That was a really meaningful moment to me. Like once they kind of give it, it's like not sharing the film, it's like giving it to them, which is really nice.
Yeah, just seeing everything come together and just seeing what your work has done and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and once we put it online, it was a whole new journey for the film where we would get emails from people who would kind of confide stories, personal stories of love and loss. And we got one email that still kind of hits hard for me, where a Sydney firefighter kind of emailed saying he doesn't really do this and he doesn't really cry in films, but when he watched it, he came across the short film and it reminded him of what he would why he does his job and what he would, what him and his brothers in the department would do for each other. And that was the most humbling kind of review, I guess, that I got. And that's a memory that's like, oh, wow, that's the power of storytelling. that's one of my favorite memories.
Mhm. What tools were involved in making this film, like softwares and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, we used for the stop motion software, we used Dragon Frame, which is kind of the industry standard for stop motion. My co-director edited with John Gavin, and they used Premiere Pro. Trying to think what else we used. We had what's it called? Our cinematographer, Gerald Thompson, who had done a lot of Adam Elliott stop motion stuff, so Mary and Max and Harvey Frumpted, and I think he had given talks to the crew of Isle of Dogs and everything. He makes his own motion control software, which was called Mantis. And so that was really great to kind of be able to, if we wanted a handheld shot, obviously you can't do that in stop motion because it's done frame by frame. You can't kind of hold the camera and get that feeling, but he would attach a gyroscope to the camera that would record its X and Y coordinates. And so you can film the shot of how you want it to look, and then you'd plug it into his software, and it would like once it's on the rig, it would be able to frame by frame replicate that handheld effect. So you could film and achieve that within stop motion. So that was with Mantis.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. Okay, and for the last question, was there any effects in the film that are meaningful to the overall plot, like sounds and filters and all that kind of stuff that you put together?
I mean, every like sound, music, editing, like every element is completely imperative for the film. Like the script is one part, but then you've got all these apartments, like even art direction. It's every element plays a huge part and meaningful part to the film. In terms of, because I noticed in the question, like in terms of effects, my co-director and I really wanted to get as much in camera as possible. I think that's what's all part of the charm with stop motion. Like it's just too hard to make stop motion and then kind of not get those little imperfections. Like that's why I spend the time doing that. There were a couple of effects. For instance, when the fox is underwater, to kind of, obviously we shot that just in my mind's gone blank. It was like in the pot, we had to cut it in half, and to kind of get the effect of water, my co-director does the effect as well, and he kind of made this heat walk that kind of made it feel like just going in and out of focus as if water was washing in front of the lens, and that really helped kind of elevate the drama. But everything else in terms of the sound and it's this we've kind of gone into this tiny world, and I'm just speaking obviously in specifics to sound as that was in the question, but I'm trying to understand what sound would be like for tiny living beings, So like the string, obviously, like if a doll's kind of being pulled apart, we can't really hear that, but using a zip or something to kind of really kind of feel what would be visceral to kind of get the reaction if you're tearing yourself apart. And so sound was absolutely essential for creating something that felt real and dramatic. And